so we can interact.
Yes, okay. Thank you.
Sir, shall we start?
Yes, we can. I think we can start. Yes.
Okay, sir. So, good evening, everyone. On behalf of Vikram Sarabhai Library, I am Ahmedabad. I am welcome to you all to our online book talk series. And today's our book talk author is Professor Vishal Gupta from Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad. I would like to thank Professor Vishal Gupta for kindly agreeing to review his newly published book, First Among Equals, Treat Leadership for Live in a Knowledge-Based World, published by Bloomberg. This is a very popular book on the leadership subject. So before we start, I give short introduction as sir need no introduction. So then after there will be 45 minutes talk, and then after we will take question and answer session for 15 minutes. So I'll give you short introduction of Professor Vishal Gupta. So Vishal Gupta sir is an associate professor in the organizational behavior area at the Indian Institute of Management, Ahmedabad, India. Professor Vishal Gupta's current area of teaching and research are leadership development, compensation and performance management, motivation, emotional intelligence, decision making, organizational justice, creativity and innovation management, and R&D management. His PhD thesis on leadership in public sector R&D organizations was awarded the Outstanding Doctoral Dissertation Award in the year 2013-14 in Leadership and Organizational Development category by European Federation for Management Development and the Emerald Group Publishing. His research has been published in international and national journals of repute and has been covered by dailies like Times of India, Business Line, Ahmedabad Mirror, Mint and TNT. He obtained his doctorate in Human Resource Management from the Indian Institute of Management, Lucknow in the year 2013. He holds a bachelor degree in Electrical and Electronics Engineering from BITS Pilani, India. Professor Gupta has chosen as the one of the India's 25th Young HR Leader in 2013 by People Matters and HR Magazine. He was recognized as an emerging psychologist by the National Academy of Psychology India in 2014. In 2016, he was conferred the Young Scientist Award in Social Science category by the National Academy of Sciences India and Scopus. He was elected as a Vice President and President-elect in 2017 to the Indian Academy of Management, and affiliated of the prestigious Academy of Management, United States of America. So now I request Professor to take over this session. I request Professor Vishal Gupta.
Okay, thank you, Viral, and thank you, Vikram Sarabhai Library, for inviting me to talk about my book. It is a pleasure to be here and to be interacting with you all. So this book, let me just give a very quick introduction to the book, and then I have a short presentation to make on the content. So this book is an outcome of the research work that I had done during my PhD dissertation, and which I followed even after my PhD, which was essentially understanding leadership as it happens in public sector R&D organizations. So R&D organizations, if we understand their job profile and job area or job content of these organizations, is to come up with something new, something innovative, something creative. And the professionals who work in R&D organizations, they have to day in and day out think about doing innovative and creative work, which I essentially call as knowledge work. And knowledge work is something which where people are thinking for a living. That means every day you have to think, you have to come up with something new, innovate and create something new. So the idea of the book is essentially I'm trying to come up with a framework, come up with a typology of leadership. What kind of leadership is necessary in a knowledge context? What are the kind qualities of leaders who lead innovative and creative professionals? And so in the book, I have presented some stories from my research work. I have presented some excerpts from the interviews that I had done as a part of my doctoral dissertation. And I have also picked up certain stories from real life practice world. I have given short caselets and case studies from different leaders, which I'm going to talk about. So that is essentially, and I have presented leadership framework, which I'll talk in a moment. So let me just start with the presentation and with a quick overview of what I have. So the book is titled, it is called as First Among Equals and Treat Leadership for Leap in a Knowledge-Based Work. The whole premise and why I titled this book as First Among Equals is the point that I'm trying to make in this book is when you are working with knowledge work or knowledge workers, essentially you are working with people who are as capable as you are. You are working with people who are as creative as you are. So in that case, it is very important for a leader to have a mindset of equals. There is, when we are talking about knowledge, when we're talking, all of us, we work in education, research domain, or and we are working with people who are smart, if not smarter, as smart as we are. So it is very important to have the mindset of being equal. Just that as a leader, you are first among those equals. So you have a responsibility. You have you have to lead those people in a certain manner, which is very important when it comes to ensuring effectiveness of the organization. So that's the premise, and that is why I titled this book as First Among Equals. And I give two concepts in the book, which I called as treat leader or treat leadership and leap in terms of work culture. And I will explain what I mean in a while. So let me begin by a short story. And this is something that I have also written in the book. So this is the Microsoft story. And if you see the two people in this photo, the first, the person on the right, we all recognize him. He is Bill Gates. And the person on the left is Steve Ballmer. Steve Ballmer was the CEO. He took over as the CEO after Bill Gates, and he remained at the helm of Microsoft from January 13, 2000 to February 4, 2014. Now, this was a time when Microsoft was actually not doing very well. And Steve Ballmer is said to be a leader who had the attitude of, I know it all. That means everybody had to come to him to take permission as to what kind of products they should work on, what kind of technologies they should work on. So he was a very, if I can use the word arrogant leader in that sense, that I would decide what has to be done in the organization. And then something interesting happened, 2014, and Indian takes over Microsoft and becomes the CEO. We all know Satya Nadella. Satya Nadella becomes CEO of Microsoft on February 4, 2014. Now Satya comes into Microsoft and says, well, the person on the ground, you are the developers, you are the people on the ground, you know what technologies you are working on, and you should decide what kind of products or what kind of platforms you should be working on. So he, in absolute contrast to Steve Ballmer, he actually gave a lot of freedom to the developers and to the scientists, to the researchers who were working, to the software professionals who were working at Microsoft. And he said, well, we will, you are the best people, you decide what kind of work you want to do. And he came up, the first thing that he did was he gave a book which was called as Nonviolent Communication, a language of life, to his top leaders. And he said that it is very important for us to understand people's feeling. It is very important for us to understand, express, and communicate feeling. We need to, we are not working with machines, we are working with people. So we should understand what our people are trying to say. The second thing that he said was, let us achieve more, work on things you enjoy. Okay. And I give you autonomy, I give you freedom. You are the best people to decide what kind of work you want to do on. So in contrast to revenue, he gave a mantra to Microsoft, and he said revenue is a lagging indicator. That means if you want to measure performance of the organization, don't measure it through revenues, because revenues will come later. It's a lagging indicator. Whereas usage, how many people are using our product, that is a leading indicator. So let us look at whether people are happy using our products and what can we do to create a happy customer, a happy user. And so what I also did, I looked at what was happening to the share price of Microsoft. And if you look at what happened from 2000 to 2014, we can see that the share prices of Microsoft was on a steep decline. They just tanked. But look at what happened from around 2014 to 2020. The share price, the stock prices of Microsoft is on an upward uh, trajectory. So this is just a case in point to emphasize the importance of leader and the importance of mindset that the leader brings into the organization, and how when we are working with technology, when we are working with knowledge industry or knowledge workers and knowledge work, what kind of impact leaders can make. And therefore it is important to think about leadership for knowledge context. So well, I don't need to belabor this point. We are living in digital times. 9 out of 10 companies have in a survey by National Human Resource Development Network, they actually admitted that they have experienced disruption by competition. Their business models, the way of working has changed. Google came up with a report which said that the technological advancements that the human race is going to see in 100 years of 21st century will be more than the advancements we have seen in 20,000 years of humanity. So there is tremendous advancements, technological advancements that we are going to see. And then there are evolving forms of work, short-term contractual works, flexible work arrangements. We are living in a time during COVID-19 where we have seen how the way we work is all dependent on technology, and technological advancements uh, are so important. And really those normal ways of working are not applicable to us anymore. So we've got to really think of that the kind of times we are living in. So I mentioned at the start, how do we define knowledge work? Knowledge work is a work that requires individuals to think for a living. The best example of knowledge work is R&D, is research and development work. Another good example could be consulting, right? So where people day in and day out, they have to think, they have to evolve, they have to come up with something new. And knowledge workers are expected to innovate, come up with new and better ways of doing things. And therefore, what is important is for organizations and leaders to think about what kind of leadership is necessary and required for. And I just did a comparative. This is another slide to just show that our organizations, we are having different workforces, different generations working together. So again, there is complexity and issues around how do we manage new age talent, and the older frameworks of leadership, older ways of thinking about leadership may not necessarily hold good when we are working with multi-generations. So what uh, I have talked about in this book, the first thing is what I call as the treat leadership. And treat leadership, it's an acronym that I have formulated, which is a combination of 5 aspects. T stands for task orientation, R stands for relation orientation, E stands for empowerment, A stands for authenticity, and the last T stands for teamwork and team building. So what we've got to do as leaders is we have to really think about how do we work with an empowered workforce, empowered people who are knowledge workers. How do we drive them to success? How do we make them effective and so on? And my research was based on this work that I have presented in this book is based on my work with CSIR, Council for Scientific and Industrial Research, which is India's largest civilian research organization. So it has 37 laboratories in different cities of the country. I visited and I surveyed, I studied 11 R&D laboratories of CSIR. I interviewed about in-depth interviews I conducted with about 52 scientists. I did survey for about 680 scientists working in these laboratories. And this leadership framework is an evolution, is an outcome based on that research. So let me just go over, and these are again short stories that I have narrated in the book. Let me just quickly explain what these 5 dimensions of leadership are. So the first one, which is the first T, is what I call as task orientation. And I would be very honest to admit that while we can say a lot about leadership, leaders should do this, leaders should do that, relation, empowerment, and so on. But the first thing is leader has to be task focused. So an effective leader has to be clear on what is the task I need to achieve, and he or she should be able to clearly tell his or her people, his or her employees, his or her subordinates, what is it that I want to achieve, right? What are our goals? What is the problem statement? What is it that we want to work? What is our vision, right? And that is what becomes the first quality of leaders. And good leaders, effective leaders, are very task focused. The example, the photo that some of you may recognize this person is JRD Tata, and he was the first pilot, licensed pilot in India, and he started Tata Airlines. Tata Airlines was taken over by the government, and it was changed to Air India. And well, when Air India was established, or when Tata Airline was established, JRD Tata was so task oriented, and he wanted to ensure that this airline should be the best in the world, that he would travel, while traveling on the flights, he would wander on the flights, he would actually go to the toilets to see whether the toilets are clean. He would take minutest interest in ensuring that the service, the treatment to the passengers is to the best extent possible. So he was so task focused that there is a famous story that one day when he found a toilet to be dirty, he actually cleaned the toilet of the plane. Though he was the chairman, he was the owner of the airline, and so on. So that's a quality of the uh, of the leader, that they have a very clear orientation of what is the task that they have to achieve. So task orientation, as I mentioned, it's about completing, it's about accomplishing the task, and the behaviors that I talk about in the book, I talk about 4 major kinds of behaviors. The first one is vision setting. So clearly defining what is it that we want to achieve, clarifying that goal for your people, monitoring the progress. If there are any problems which people encounter on the way, those problems are addressed. And buffering means if you find that there is any politics or there is any unwanted interference that is being created, you also tend to shield your people and ensure that politics of the workplace, politics or those kinds of negative things do not impact. So you buffer your people from those negative things. But task orientation is necessary. It is a necessary but not sufficient condition. So it is necessary, but we have to complement task orientation with other qualities of leadership, which I mentioned, which I would describe now in the other parts. Okay, so let me narrate another story, and again, some of you may have heard about this story, very famous story that is talked about on leadership. So India actually joined the club of countries which could send its own satellites into space in about 1980. ISRO was established in 1970, and this picture that you are seeing is the launch of SLV-3. This was the first indigenous rocket that made an attempt to send an Indian satellite into orbit. The satellite was called as the Rohini satellite, and the rocket was called as SLV-3. And Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, our ex-president, was the project in charge who was responsible for ensuring that this project completes. So after about quite a number of years of preparation, this launch, the first launch was planned on August 10, 1979. About 40 seconds before the launch, while the back counting for the launch was happening, the computer detected an error. The computer detected an error, and Dr. Kalam was immediately informed, and he had to make a choice whether to abort the launch or go ahead with the launch. So he consulted his scientist, and the scientist told that all the calculations are in place, so they should go ahead with the launch. So Dr. Kalam bypassed the computer and manually decided to launch the rocket. And what happened is 317 seconds into the launch, the rocket crashed and fell into Bay of Bengal. Now, Dr. Kalam was quite scared because there was a lot of media present waiting to hear from him as to what went wrong, because so much of investment, so much of energy was invested in this launch. Now, Professor Satish Dhawan, who is the other man in this photo, the person on the right is Dr. Kalam, person on the left is Professor Satish Dhawan. He was the chairman of ISRO at that time. So he goes up to Dr. Kalam and he says that let us go and address the media. And he addresses the media, and he does not allow Dr. Kalam to address. And he says, he as the chairman of ISRO, he says, these were his words. He said, "We failed, but I have a very good trust in my team that next time we will be succeeding for sure." So he talked to his team, and Dr. Kalam again worked on the project. And the launch, the first successful launch, they again tried, and on 18th July 1980, that is about 11 months after the failed attempt, the launch was attempted again, and India joined the Club of Nations in 1980, which can place satellites, indigenous satellites by themselves. Professor Satish Dhawan now congratulated Dr. Kalam and his team, and now asked Dr. Kalam to go and address the media. So he actually allowed Dr. Kalam to go and face the media and take the accolades that were being showered for the successful launch of the team. Now, why do I narrate this incident is very interesting. Dr. Kalam was a great man himself. He was Bharat Ratna. He became our president. But wherever Dr. Kalam went and wherever he was asked to share his lessons on leadership, Dr. Kalam always remembered Professor Satish Dhawan. He said that the biggest lesson that I learned was from Professor Satish Dhawan, and the lesson was when failure came, the leader took the responsibility, but when success came, the leader happily passed it on to his team and subordinates. So his biggest lesson came from someone who had actually allowed him to take the accolade, but he would never forget that kind incident. And that is the importance of the other aspect of the treat model. And the first bit that I talk about is what we call as relation orientation, which is you are not just as a leader, you've got to also focus on relationships. You've also got to focus on the development of your subordinates. And this relation orientation is built on open two-way communication, where people can talk to each other. You as a leader, you think about how do we inspire our people, how do we support, and how do we recognize their behaviors, their achievements, their efforts. The next bit of treat is empowering. Again, the example of Dr. Kalam and Professor Dhawan, which talks about empowering, allowing, giving people the freedom, giving them, backing their efforts, allowing them to make use of their talent, and tackling the problems in the way they like. So empowering behavior consists of consulting and delegation. Consulting is when you actually take advice of your colleagues, of your subordinates when doing work, and delegating is when you actually allow your subordinates to take responsibility for the work that has to be done. So as the story of Microsoft also suggests, that individuals who are working on the ground, they need to be empowered, especially in a knowledge-based world where knowledge is so fluid, it is evolving constantly. So we have to allow people who are actually working on the ground, interacting with customers, interacting with the users, to take decisions and to solve the problems that they are encountering. Right, so that is the next bit on empowering, which becomes important enough. The next story, which again I would like to just mention quickly here, is some of you may recognize this was a very popular picture that had come up. This is picture of Manohar Parrikar, who passed away recently. He was the CEM, Chief Minister of Goa. He was a graduate from IIT Bombay, and he served as Chief Minister of Goa from 2000 to 2005, and then again 2012-14, and he also served as our Union Defense Minister. Now this photo is actually, he was fighting cancer, and you can see there is a tube inserted in his nose, which was used to send medicines but he, in this photo, he is addressing a public rally, and he came out fighting his health, fighting the disease, but wanted to do good for the society. So authenticity is a very important hallmark of great leaders, and authenticity is nothing but setting examples, leading by example, and doing what you are saying. So there is a very nice incident that Ram Madhav narrates about Manohar Parrikar. So Ram Madhav once visited Manohar Parrikar's house, and so he was a bit early. He reached the CM's residence in Goa at about 8 in the morning. So at 8:30, he saw that Manohar Parrikar entered the residence driving his own Maruti Zen. So Ram Madhav asked Manohar Parrikar what happened. Uh, did the driver not come in the morning? Why did you drive? And his reply was that every day morning I drop my kids to school in my own vehicle. I only use the same vehicle when I have to go to the secretariat for official purposes. So again, a important aspect of leadership is whether we do what we say, and are we setting the right examples of integrity, of authenticity for our people to follow. So authenticity, I define, I mention it as doing what you preach, doing what is right, and having the courage to choose what is right over what is easy and fast, and practicing your values that you hold dear and that you encourage in others, right? So that is something that. And the last aspect of the TREAT framework is team building. Now, Google did, this is an insight that I have taken from Google's work on what makes a perfect team. For over 2 years, Google, at its different sites around the world, they conducted a project which is called as Project Aristotle. For 2 years, Google followed 180 teams comprising of 37,000 employees. And they wanted to, in very simple words, they wanted to understand what is it that makes teams click? What is it that makes good teams? And their answer was two words, and they called it as teams that are effective are teams where there is psychological safety, right? What is psychological safety? It's nothing but where people feel that it is safe to share things, where it is safe to talk about what is it that you want to talk to your people, to your colleagues, to your team members, and so on. And psychological safety is made out of two things. And let me just explain this picture that is there on the slide. And Google found that teams that are where there is psychological safety, it has two qualities. The first one is what is called as conversational turn taking. What is conversational turn taking? Conversational turn taking very simply means that members of the team speak for roughly the same time in a team meeting. So if you are in a team, and you can, all of you can do this simple experiment at your end. Look at a team meeting and think about how much time do different members in the team take to talk and to speak. If you feel that everybody is speaking for the same time, that's a safe team or safe team environment. Whereas if you are seeing that there is only one person or two people who are dominating the discussion and everybody else is remaining quiet, that is not, that means you should get an insight, or you should understand that that is not the best way to conduct or the team meeting, or that is not the best environment that is possible. And the second quality that Google found was what they call as above average social sensitivity. That means members are skilled at intuiting or understanding how others are feeling. That means Are we able to understand the feelings of others? Again, going back to that relation orientation bit, uh, do we really understand what people in my team may be feeling without even their speaking up? So that is where you need to be a little more cognizant about. So that's the uh, quality of leaders who are uh, good at team building. They are able to facilitate resolution of conflicts. They are able to understand if there is somebody who's dominating the discussion, somebody who's keeping quiet, that is again a kind of conflict, encourages cooperation and develops identification with the work team, right? Okay, so this is a quick recap of the TREAT framework, and I call this as people who are of this kind. They are first among equals who follow this framework. And if you have a TREAT leader, then subordinates feel that they have been treated well by their leaders. That means if there is a person who is able to follow this or show this kind of behavior, then subordinates will believe that they have been treated well, and such leadership is a treat to watch, and when displayed at workplace is likely to produce great results. That is the quality of. Let me just take 5 more minutes to talk about the second aspect, which I call as the LEAP framework. So again, I take this example from a technology company. And the good thing is in Mobi is a Indian company. It is an Indian unicorn. So its market value, it was the first unicorn to become profitable in 2016. Unicorn is organization which has a market value of greater than 1 billion US dollars. And uh, I looked at the work culture of in Mobi, and these are just few things I wanted to highlight. If you look at the work culture of InMobi and what kind of practice they have, so there is no attendance log, there is no travel policy. Uh, all of us, we work in organizations and we have so many documents, so many things that tell us about travel policy. At InMobi, they have a one sentence travel policy which says spend company's money like it's your own. That is their travel policy. Pets are allowed at work. There are 3-month bridge assignments. So if I am an employee, I can go to another department, work there for 3 months, learn, understand how things are happening in different departments. If there are people who have quit InMobi to do their own startups, InMobi, even if you resign from the organization and you are doing your own startup, the office space of InMobi is open for employees. So you can continue to come to office, use InMobi's office space, and do your own startup, and there are no issues with that. And there are 20% time allocated or allowed to explore things outside. So let me just introduce briefly the culture. The second aspect which I talk about in the book is these organizations, knowledge organizations which are successful and effective, they have a work culture which comprises of 4 things: L, E, A, and B. So L stands for a culture which emphasizes learning. Is a culture which emphasizes enjoyment. A is a culture that emphasizes autonomy. And the last one is the P, which is performance. So the hypothesis or the point that I'm trying to make in the book is, while a lot of times we emphasize performance or we talk about, well, why are my people not performing? Why is the performance low? But we don't usually focus on the other 3 things, which is there enough growth or learning opportunities available at workplace? Do my people find it enjoyable to work in this organization? Are they allowed? Are they given freedom? Is there autonomy at workplace? uh, are we giving them freedom to do things as they want to do? And if so that's my hypothesis. If learning, enjoyment, and autonomy is there at workplace, performance will automatically follow. But a lot of times the problem is we focus on performance, but we don't really uh, pay attention to learning, enjoyment, and autonomy at workplace. So that is what stands for leap cultures. And just a diagrammatic representation, this is a diagram that I have presented in the book. So learning at workplace is impacted by task orientation. So a leader who is focused at work is willing to solve problems, willing to guide people at work. Authenticity, again, leaders who are leading by example, showing it through their hard work. And team building. So there is also a lot of learning that happens through team members. All these three aspects, task orientation, authenticity, and team building, can positively impact learning at workplace, which would eventually drive performance. Relation orientation, that is being supportive, facilitative, encouraging. Authenticity, again, doing what you are saying. So again, it sort of reflects in the kind of importance you give to feelings and relationships. And again, team building. So if you have good team members, you find it as an enjoyable workplace. And the last one is autonomy, which is by definition empowering, is a quality which leads to autonomy at workplace. And so treat for leave, this is the mantra that I want to leave you with. That means you've got to treat people well in order to enable leap in workplace. So we've got to, as leaders, as members of teams, as members of organizations, we've got to treat our people well in order to enable leap at workplace. I think I will stop here. I have uh, uh, the last bit is I just in the book talk about three qualities of these workplaces, but I would not uh, go there. I will just leave you with these two ideas: treat and lead. And as leaders, we've got to treat uh, to enable lead at workplace.
Sir,
Yes,
we have a few questions for you.
yes,
Shall we start Q&A round?
yes, we can do that. Yes.
So I'm just taking few questions which is asked by Professor Chitra Singla.
Yes.
Can we summarize that leadership is all about people management, and this work basically address various aspects of people management as in empowerment, relation building, and team management, team building act. Second, she is curious if benevolence and humility as qualities emerge or not in your work.
Yes. So thank you for the question, Chitra. So let me take the second one first. Benevolence is I actually talk about benevolence in relation orientation. So having that consideration for people, having an understanding for their feelings, and uh, so that is where I call it as relation orientation. And humility I have talked about in authenticity. So humility is a quality of authentic leaders, people who are people who are authentic. What is humility? Humility is nothing but having a very considerate view of yourself. That means you have a realistic view of yourself, and you are willing to, you don't look at yourself as somebody who knows it all, somebody who's uh, uh, yeah, so you are not arrogant and so on. So that is the quality that I have qualified as under authenticity. Now the first one, which is leadership, well, uh, I would tend to, because I actually come from behavioral domain. To me, leadership is definitely about people management, and if the primary task of a leader is to think about, uh, I would say majorly two things. The first one is vision, and developing. Where do we want to go, right? That kind of an idea. And the second is managing the workforce. Now there are issues, there are contentions where people actually say that as a leader today it is becoming uh, uh, increasingly difficult for a leader to even decide where are we headed, because things are changing so fast. So even that vision setting and deciding on how do we want to do, even there also you need inputs of a lot of people, not just one person deciding. uh, but definitely people management is something that has to be done.
Yes, sir. Second question is of Dr. Trupti Dave. And what, according to you, are the characteristics that make people first among their equals?
Okay, so to me, the mindset of uh, believing that everybody is equal at the workplace is very important in a knowledge work setting. And first among equals is, well, you are when, and I have mentioned this in the book. First means you are the person who is uh, going to be held responsible for uh, uh, if something does not work. And you should be willing to take that responsibility also. You should not say that, well, uh, because of my people this thing happened and I'm not responsible. So having that clarity that I would be held responsible and I am willing to take that responsibility because I am first, I stand. So if the accolades also come, it is your choice how you want to share it. But definitely when it comes to responsibility, you've got to take that ownership and that onus. And that story of Professor Satish Dhawan tends to highlight that thing very well for me, as in what is it that first among equals.
This is the last question
Yeah.
from Umesh Rathod. How do you look at ethical leadership in post COVID 19?
Ethical leadership in uh, as in,
Post COVID 19.
yeah, so well, I would say that in crisis situations, actually, it becomes all the more important to behave ethically, right? Because the easier thing is to bypass principles, right? And but let me also say one thing, that you see, when we talk about ethics, there is never 99, or it is very difficult to say that there is 99% ethics. So you cannot say, I will be honest today, I will not be honest tomorrow, right? So if you are honest, you have to try and ensure that you are honest or you are doing things according to the principles or your values uh, uh, as many times as possible, or all the times that is possible, right? Unless it is you have no other choice, right? So I would actually say that in crisis, it is all the more necessary to behave ethically and to set the right examples. And the second thing is, always remember that if you make an excuse for not being ethical, that is a slippery slope. That is, you will always find another excuse tomorrow and say, okay, let me also be unethical here. Then you will find another excuse, and so on. So that is
Thank you so much, sir. There are lots of questions are coming.
yes, we can take that if you, yeah.
So still we have few questions.
Okay, so let me.
One of the question from Diljit Kaur.
Hmm.
Sir, have you come across any leadership trait in educational institution, especially government institutions or universities?
Uh, so that's a good question. So Professor Satish Dhawan actually came from IISc. He was actually I am not sure at this time, but he was an academic who was working at IISc. So there are good examples, and the thing is, you can these qualities can be used for governing educational institutions. So short answer to that is yes, Professor Satish Dhawan was actually working at an educational institution. uh, yeah.
Okay, sir. So shall we conclude that? I think
Yes, so yeah, I think I would be very happy to take your uh, questions. You can write to me at vishal@ima.ac.in, and I will be happy to respond uh, to your
okay, sir.
questions. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Professor Vishal Gupta, for sharing your valuable time and reviewing your latest book, which is very in-depth and informative for all our joinees. So I say thank you so much, sir.
Yeah. Can I just, Viral, can I just take one question because I think that is important
Yeah,
and
please, sir, because there are.
so Apurva is asking, most of these stories that you told were from top leadership perspective, where most corporate culture trickles down from CEO, owner, and aren't these traits specifically suited for only the top leadership and not the middle managers? So actually, I would say, Apurva, that all of these things that I'm trying to write, and I have mentioned, I have given quotes from various scientists whom I interviewed during this work. Actually, these are things that are applicable to even middle and uh, 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 leaders at different levels in the organization. So, for example, task orientation, relation orientation. See, in an organization, everybody is a leader as well as a follower. I think this is something that we've got to understand and remember. While I am leading my team, I am also a follower because I am subordinate to a leader who is above me. So I am leader as well as a follower. And one of the things that we've got to remember is uh, what differentiates good people from bad people or good leaders from not so good leaders is uh, good leaders are individuals who decide to say that, well, I do not like something about my leader, but I will ensure that I will be a different leader for my subordinates. So I will change, I will do things differently for my people because you cannot change your bosses. That is a very difficult thing in organizations. It is not possible. But what you can definitely do is you can change yourself. So all these things, task, relation, empowerment, autonomy, authenticity, and team, you can actually do it at your level, whichever level you are in, because you are a leader for people below you, and you are also a follower, and you are following people above. And what to do when these traits are not in sync with those of top leaders? Well, that's a $1 million question, and I just mentioned we cannot change our bosses. So if these things are not in sync with your leaders or with your uh, there are two things that you can do. One is either leave the organization, which is not an easy thing to do because that is impractical at a lot of times, right? The other thing, if you cannot leave the organization, what you can do is try to do it for your team. And I can only say that keep the flame burning in your heart, that when you become that leader, god fortunately, god willing, maybe you will reach that position, you will not do the same thing that your leader is doing today. One of the problems in our organizations about leaders is we forget how we used to feel when we were subordinates, when we become leaders, and we tend to do the same things as leaders. So keep that flame burning, remember those things, and ensure that when you become that leader, when you take that position, you will do things differently. Don't forget your experiences when you take that leadership position. I think that is something that is important, and I can say. Okay,
sir.
I think, yeah.
Thank you so much, sir. And thank you all the participants for joining this online book talk session. We are hoping that this kind of session we will continue in upcoming time. And once again, sir, thank you so much for sparing your valuable time. And I wish you frequently visit our library and use our resources. Okay, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Thank you,
much.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.